Hi, it's Louisa Dahl, and welcome to the Interactive Minds podcast, where I talk with passionate marketers, innovators, and digital leaders about their specific recipes for success. In this episode of the Interactive Minds podcast, I'm delighted to bring you a panel that I was part of recently. It was organised by Brisbane agency OTM, who ran it as an outreach and virtual helpline session for marketers during the peak of COVID. It is hosted by OTM's Managing Director, Amy Ward, and my fellow panellist was Lynn Hawkins. Here's 3 things you're going to learn. 1, how businesses and marketers are making a pivot in these times. 2, why marketers need to simplify their messaging. And 3, how you can do your best work and further your career. You'll also get to hear a bit about the framework of my book and how you can use it to step up and stand out as a marketer. Let's get into it.
Welcome everybody. My name is Amy Ward and I'm glad you can all join us again this week for our outreach and virtual helpline live Q&A sessions. This, I think we've worked out, is our 8th or 9th time. Who would have thought that the last 2 months could roll by so quickly? The nugget of this idea feels like it only came about last week, but here goes. As a friend of mine said recently, what day is it? I don't know. It's Blur's Day. Every day seems to be rolling into another at the moment, but here we are. So for those of you who might be new to these sessions that we've been running, it was a few weeks ago now, or actually a couple of months ago now, that our team got together right at the beginning of, the start of the shutdown in things in Australia. And we were looking at what could we be doing for our own clients and some of our community members to help out in this time. At that point in time, we'd actually had some contracts or some client work postponed. So we had a little bit of space to do an initiative like this. Interestingly, since that time, a lot of work has actually kicked back off again, but somehow we're still managing to pull off these sessions, and we're very grateful for the community that's assisting us in the live Q&A. Today we have a bumper conversation. I'm so excited to have Lynn Hawkins and Louisa Dahl joining us. Lynn both these ladies wear a myriad of hats, so I'm going to actually let them introduce themselves properly. But Lynn Hawkins she's the founder of Business Women Australia, which is a national membership body for women in business. She's a marketing extraordinaire. She runs her own marketing agency, Hawkins Marketing, and does contract CMO roles and advisory roles for different clients. So a very busy person and a lot of amazing experience that she'll share with us today. And we've also got Louisa Dahl. Louisa, another person who has a myriad of things that she has done and is doing. So Louisa is the founder and CEO of Interactive Minds, which is a community and a platform for marketers and digital marketers around Australia. She's the lady behind the Digital Summit that's been running for several years, although we'll most likely be running in a different form from here on in. She runs training and community circles for people in marketing. She's the author of a book, which I actually now have a copy of here, The Deliberate Digital Marketer. So some great insights there. So we're very lucky to have Lynn and Louisa joining us today, and they'll be sharing their insights. The session today, we have had lots of questions come in, and then throughout our own conversations, so many topics that we could talk about. We thought we'd change it up a little bit this week and actually talk about some leadership topics, some topics around careers for people in marketing, and just generally what can we be doing as marketers to, I guess, to use your words, I think it was, Louisa, to step up and stand out and to be doing the best we can for our organisations. Marketers and people in charge of brands and people in charge of business lines, we have an important role to play in the organisations that we either work for or that might be our own brands or that of our clients. We have some amazing insights into the marketplaces that we work in, and we often come at things from a creative point of view that not necessarily everyone else in the management team or the organisation will share those perspectives. But a lot of the time marketers don't necessarily play that role or offer those insights as well as they could. So we thought today we'd look at how can marketers step up and stand out to guide their organisations and brands at the moment. We'll look at some practical examples and real examples of how marketers have been doing the quick pivot, and that's a term that I'm sure if we did some Google Analytics on has been very well used, probably right behind unprecedented at the moment, an unprecedented use of the word pivot, but something that actually we all do need to be doing. And just this morning I was talking to a client who's doing exactly that. They've been pivoting. They've actually been looking at discontinuing a particular line of business and focusing on another, and that's something that they may or may not have done so quickly had they not been in this situation. And we want to look at the way forward. We're potentially moving out of the acute situation that we were in, 1 or 2 months ago with our businesses and with our brands. It really is the time to be looking ahead. What does the next 3 months, next 6 months, possibly next 12 months look like? And let's, we'll talk about some of those things. So that's actually 3 pretty big topic areas. We'll see what we can get through, ladies, in this call. I might actually start with you, Lynn, and we'll start a little bit easy. Actually, no, before I do that, I do actually need the two of you to let us all know what you've been doing and what you've been working on. Did I introduce you well enough?
Wonderfully, absolutely wonderfully. I'll start and then hand over to Louise. Louisa, I can't wait to get inside your brain just looking at that overview we just had a sneaky look at. Look, in terms of my roles, I'm lucky in that I manage a couple of my own brands as well as helping my clients with their businesses. So I'm seeing it from a business owner's point of view as well as from a consultant's point of view. And, one of the things that's really interesting is that certainly in professional services and in a B2B environment, the challenges are quite different, than in a product environment. I'm a shareholder and a part owner of an online product bookkeeping software and app, and our strategies and the way we've pivoted for that and the opportunities that have come to that have been quite phenomenal and very much around a online retail focus, whereas in the B2B environment it's been very much around really being true to our brand promises and being able to deliver on those relationships. So, yes, thank you for that lovely introduction. It was a great introduction, and I'm really looking forward to going and sharing some of the things that we're learning along the ways and hearing from some of our participants too about what they're seeing. So over to you, Louisa.
Well, thank you. Likewise, Amy, you did a great job on introducing, I suppose, Interactive Minds and what I do within that. I've been in the marketing industry for just over 20 years now, so had lots of hands-on experience initially, worked in lots of different businesses, and then started a few of my own over the years as well. So at Interactive Minds, we're really all about helping marketers to succeed. And we do that through a couple of things. One is helping them stay up to date and knowing what's changing and where the opportunities are. The second one is bringing them together to collaborate and learn from each other, which is something I'm really passionate about. And then also the third way is through having a bit of a plan for, what they're trying to achieve, where they want to go and how they're going to get there, which is where the book that I've written comes into it as well. So we do that through a range of events. We run, as you said, the Digital Summit. We've run for the last 7 years. We are actually taking a break this year, which was something we'd planned before all this happened, which turned out to be quite fortuitous. But we also then do seminar events on a range of different topics throughout the year typically as well. So, and I should mention we do a mastermind group for marketers, bringing marketers together to collaborate, have a podcast and a couple of other things on the go as well.
Busy. so much good experience between the two of you that I know will be invaluable for the people in this call. And we have a mix of people from independent consultants through to marketing heads for very large brands in this call. So I think we'll all take something useful away. So what I was actually going to ask initially of you, Lynn, was when we spoke earlier this week, one of the first things that you had noted for your own businesses, but also that of your clients, was this importance of short-term planning and that ability to be nimble and to pivot. I'm seeing a lot of talk around that, but how have you actually done that with the brands that you've been working with in the last month or two?
Well, one of the most important things that we've found is that we have really had to dive into our data and identify where that 20% sits that's giving us 80% of our revenue, because our short-term survival mechanism is around really looking after and positioning for where our greatest risk is. The risk is in losing those 20%. If you lose that 20%, that gives you 80% of your revenue, and that's a standard. It's amazing how it applies in so many ways. Identifying, making sure that we're reaching out to them, communicating with them, helping them, finding out what it is that they're needing, and sort of recognising that is our short-term priority right now, is looking after that customer base or the client base if we're in B2B, and letting them know that we appreciate them and that we're here to help. So identifying what problems they're coming up with. So, identifying if you're in a retail sector and you've got that 20% of market share across certain industries, what's going on in that space at the moment, and is that going to be an area where you need to be redefining your products and services? So getting back into the marketing mix. Communication's important. A lot of your funnel and your advertising stuff you might need to turn off right now. We turned off a lot of our strategies that were working for us pre-COVID that we're bringing in, because those markets just died, particularly if you can imagine across anyone that's in hospitality, travel, tourism. You're just going to be able to have to say, right, what is it and who is it that's going to be likely to survive, and where's the growth? Definitely the growth is going to be in regional, and how can we make sure that we're helping those brands and the opportunities for those brands to be coming through. So changing some of your messaging online to make sure that sector and the local sector is actually jumping on, that your Google ad spend's getting more localised, getting right down into the data of every single piece of your marketing mix. Inside that, there's so many different things that you have to do. And as a marketer, if you're in charge of that marketing spend, your best friend has to be your CFO. Get close to your CFO and to your IT team, your tech team and your CFO, because you might also find that there's cost savings that you can make. If you come on the front foot and say, do you know what, I've identified this amount of savings for our organisation across some technology and MarTech that we were going to spend, let's turn it off. If it's on a monthly subscription, let's turn all that off. We're not going to use that right now. You need to be thinking about the budget and how to make everything lean and only using what you're using, just like you're doing at home. Come in and think about it at work and think, how is it that we can make sure that every bit of expenditure is about really getting sticky with those important markets that are absolutely vital to our survival and growth, and the spends and the technology and any ad spends that we're doing, get in and work it out, turn off what's not working.
That's really great advice, and that because it's very easy as marketers, we're so often focused on where are the new clients coming from, or where is the new audience coming from, where's that brand amplification, and that is all very, very important, but there are times when that's got to be secondary, and you've got to keep that real revenue base.
Even for small business, look around your own local area. I've been marvelling at the ingenious, innovative approaches that even we have a bar called the Old Laundry. It's set up in a bit of an industrial conversion that used to be a big commercial old laundry thing in the 1900s or whatever. And they weren't obviously able to have people coming in. It's, bar, restaurant, it's a really cool spot. They do all the sorts of fun stuff events-wise. Haven't been able to do any of that. So what they've done is the front window that was originally, their window outlook for bar stools and stuff looking out, they've turned into what they called the laundry chute. And it's basically they've made their restaurant providing beautiful home cooked lasagnas and all sorts of stuff you can pick up and go and cook yourself, or fish and chips or ready-made food, and a great bottle of wine. So they've got rid of everything. So they're not going to have stock that's going out of date. They've pivoted completely in a really ingenious way that's so fun, and it's kept that whole street going. So people, all the other little coffee shops and stuff are riding on the back of their within a week, they had the laundry chute open. I was so impressed. I was wishing they were one of my clients and I could say that's my idea, but
you can just get alignment by association. I'm one of their customers.
Well, I know the owner very well, and he's just a brilliant marketing mind, and very, it was almost like what I've been amazed at the creative minds that have excelled in times of crisis and that have had the guts to do something and say, well, what have we got to lose? Let's just do this. They painted the whole front of around that window in bright yellow. So you couldn't miss it when you're driving past, having a look who's open. Has everyone done the drive-by in the local area? Who can we get takeaways from? You could not miss it.
That's fantastic. That really is. Louisa, you were sharing with me that you've been having chats with your community of marketers over the last few weeks, and you were noticing there's sort of a bit of a theme. There's either people who are just really focused in on the here and now, and you used a fantastic term. It was the people that are looking at the digital hustle. Oh my God, what should I be doing? Would you mind sharing some of those things with us? Like, what are some of the things that people are either grappling with or that they've actually been able to do really quickly?
Yeah. Look, I'll just take one step back quickly and say that one of the things I was finding is that I wasn't really clear on what all these changes meant for my audience. And so I thought, well, the best way to find out is to have conversations with them. And that's the first thing that I would encourage everyone to do with your clients, if you're not already doing it, is to pick up the phone and have some conversations and find out exactly what this means for them. So I actually did this via our community, like our Facebook page. And I said, hey, I've got 10-minute pick my brain sessions. We can talk about anything you want. Let's just see where the conversation goes. So not only was it hopefully adding some value to them, but it also gave me some insights into what they're going through at the moment, some of which I'll give you some kind of outlines of now. What I noticed from some of these calls, there was two themes, as you said. One was that they really were very busy as marketers, and that they were pivoting and trying to get more digitized very quickly in able to serve their customers. So, for example, some of these people maybe were in a operating as a supplier to a retail environment. They weren't necessarily having direct contact with their consumers, but with retail kind of shutting down effectively, they found that the only way for them to sell was to go direct to consumer. Therefore, they needed their e-commerce up and running quicker, they needed it working better, and they needed more conversations with their customers. So that's what they were really focused on, getting quick changes and quick wins on the board and doing that hustle to do so in a short time frame. Whereas I think previously this was a longer play that they had in the back of their drawer that they were hoping to get to later. So that was definitely a theme that I saw across a couple of businesses, whereas others were more accepting that, okay, things are a little bit slower now. We can't do some of the campaigns and things we had scheduled. So instead, we're going to look at some of these longer term projects that we had on the back burner, and we're going to bring them forward. So things like CRM system implementations or data migration, some of those longer term ones that take a bit of time and a bit of thought, they were using some of the time now to get in and think about what the outcomes were for them and to kick them off.
Yeah, and we've noticed as an agency a few requests starting to come in probably in the last few weeks from clients that have had things like website projects that they've been thinking they might do, and they've now got a little bit of space to, actually write the content for those and think about, okay, well, can we get going on building those things? So it's possible that those of us in agency land might find over the next few months that there's a little bit of a spike in projects like that as well. that come out, or freelancers or contract people might find that they're getting called in. Because I imagine that the organisations who are finding that space between, they'll probably want to do it quite quickly because they'll want to be ready to go. So it's good because it maybe creates a bit of work, but it's work that might all come in a little peak and then...
Well, interestingly, in these conversations, I found that both groups, whatever kind of approach they tended to be taking, they were both doing work that they hadn't planned on doing at this time. So either way, it was a change and they were having to either accelerate something that was, for later or make a change one way or another. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Lynn, when you and I were talking, you made a interesting observation around trust. And this is probably not just for people in marketing. This is for any part of an organisation. We're all pretty much now working from home, particularly anyone in professional services or non-retail environments. And so organisations have had to have greater trust in their employee base. From a marketing perspective, though, you made the point about delegations, and that's a really interesting one.
That's right. A lot of the leaders that I'm working with, the owners and the CEOs and the partners of law firms are recognising that if they've got their teams working from home, one, that they're trusting that they're going to achieve what they're set out to achieve, that they're going to do the right thing and keep focused and not let lots of the distractions sort of delay productivity or take them away, or even in terms of working off their VPNs, that they're not going to be bringing in security issues and risks to their technology of their companies, all those sorts of things. But if we take it from a marketing point of view, what is that going to bring in terms of opportunities as marketers of services and products and understanding it's a new important community issue, and something that's very in foresight of everyone's mind is this concept of trust. How do you build trust, and what does that mean in terms of our brands? So we talked about the power of a brand as marketers always in our conversations around the boardroom tables or with our clients. How do you build a brand that delivers on its promise, that it's an engaging brand that people will love and keep coming back to and help promote? So, when you think about it in terms of a relationship with anyone, with an individual, the most important thing that builds trust is to keep your promise. So let's look at what your brand promise is. What are you actually what's at the core? What's the core value that your brand stands for? What is that most important value that you're promising on and delivering? And then how does that then be articulated? Here's a great opportunity for marketers to simplify their messaging, to simplify that strong core element that your market really, really is going to wake up and want to be associated with and want to keep coming back to. So your effective communication is going to be around really making sure that that brand promise is being delivered. Now, I think that video and webinars in this kind of environment are kings, absolutely, because they are the experience, the personal human experience of the brand. And human-to-human contact is so important in tough times, in times of crises, in times when, there's a feeling of limitation. We actually congregate, and, we were talking about this earlier on, Amy, around this great Australian team player culture that we've got. Together we're stronger. We've actually had states that have chosen to do things before the governments decided to do it, and the communities come in behind them. We've had small sectors of the communities not doing what they should be doing, and the majority going, come on, guys, you're putting us all at risk. This team culture is absolutely a beautiful opportunity for us as marketers to think about how we build that psyche into our brand and into our brand promises as authentic, real brands. So I think that I'd be really interested to see, and it'd be great seeing how this messaging and how the channel kind of engagement and how the content starts to really, really truly reflect those things, but not to actually, I think, one thing that would damage trust, and I've seen this a bit too, is the misuse of fear. So playing on the fear and putting fuel on the fire of fear is not going to do your brand any good in the long term. You might get a good quick result from something, and I'm sure we can all see examples where they've used a fear factor in their campaigns, and it's not going to serve them well in the long run. So while we've still got this important focus on short term and pivot, don't lose sight of what the long-term game is here, and that is to build that absolute love for your brand, that, hey, that they're a reliable, they're good guys. We want to be supporting this company, this brand, this organisation. So I think that might have got a little distracted there, but
no, I think that was all really, really good information. Where it started was we were talking about delegations, and I think you had actually made the observation that this was you were seeing examples of companies that, because they're having to pivot their short-term plans so quickly, they were actually putting a lot more trust in the hands of their teams and upping those authority delegations so that people could move more quickly to make decisions and get
on a practical level, as marketers, for those of you who are in, structures where there's policies in the organisation and so on, something very important and upfront to do, and again with your best buddies, the CFO and the CEOs, make sure that there is documented delegations for you to be able to make some decisions on the fly. Whether or not that is a spend, delegation to spend without going into, the usual operational planning meeting where everyone, has their two bobs and the CFO, it almost is like it's you versus them and, do we really need to spend this? What you want to do is actually streamline a lot of those decision processes and have some delegations in place where you have the authority to run this. The marketers are in the key seats right now. The finance guys will by now have worked out all the places where we can cost cut to save and survive. Now it's up to us as marketers. We're the growth hackers here. We know how to build, we know how to engage, we know how to bring attention to our brands, and then we know the processes, we know them, what you have to put in place to actually plan and convert. And to get that right MarTech in place now is where the spend needs to be. And if you're a marketer and you're worrying about your career, if you aren't across the right MarTech, then you need to be spending some time self-educating and getting on top of it.
Which is an excellent segue. It's like we planned this to some questions that actually came in, and I'm guessing it's because of the fact that we have the two of you on the panel today. We've had a couple of questions coming in before today's show around career progression, and Louisa, I might pose this to you initially. One of these is a relatively long question, but it seems like any prospect of career progression in the near future has just gone out the window with the amount of people who will be applying for jobs dramatically increasing. What advice would you offer to anyone looking to achieve promotion in such a competitive market? And this is coming from someone who's in a mid-level executive type role, so not brand new in the industry. So what advice would you offer to anyone looking to achieve promotion or just career progression in such a competitive market?
I wouldn't say that career progression has disappeared, in my personal opinion. I think there's always going to be people wanting roles or people wanting marketers in roles. So yes, there might be more competition perhaps than there has been before, but by all means don't write yourself off in terms of being able to progress at this time. I think really the opportunity for marketers right now is that you need to demonstrate your value. So it goes back to what Lynn was saying about knowing everything from the financials and how the business is working, making sure that you have the right KPIs that are going to add value, and being able to make sure that you're delivering and that you're documenting the value that you've got. Because at the end of the day, the way you're going to get the next role is that you can demonstrate what you've achieved in your current role or your previous role. So I don't think it's ever been so important to make sure that you're bringing it back to the business objectives, tying it into what they're trying to achieve as a business, and adding value that way. So that's a really short answer to quite a long question, but that's where I would be starting. So that's, making sure that you've got really clear objectives, and that they're agreed on with management, and that's what you're progressing, that you're able to get some runs on the board, that you're documenting those runs on the board and sharing them back and celebrating those wins. They're just some really basic things that you need to be doing in your job anyway. But I think, if you can do that now and demonstrate that you're able to add value during this time, that's only going to look better for you. So that's probably a bit of a starting point. I don't know if you want to ask another question on that before I go any further.
Well, actually, I was wondering if it might be a good time to just pop up. You had shared a slide with me prior to this call. If I pop that up now, if you wouldn't mind
sure.
Chatting to that.
So I have written a book called The Deliberate Digital Marketer, which really is about what I feel are some of the really important things marketers need to be looking at and that we're needing to be doing throughout our careers. So there's really 6 key areas here. And if you're wanting to progress your career, or I suppose, whatever you're looking to do, whether it be in your current role or your future role, these are areas that you need to be across. They're actually really simple areas, but having a deliberate approach to them and doing them simultaneously is what's important. So if I started, readiness is really just about having this conversation in the first place, being ready to look at where you want to go and what you're trying to achieve. Actually, on that note, I had a really awesome podcast interview. So if you are interested in checking it out, I'll provide the details later. But I interviewed Nick McIntosh, who actually used to be Brisbane based, now lives in the US. And he took us through his whole plan for finding his next job. And it was amazing, and so much depth and specificity over what he was going for. So be ready and know where you're going. That's step 1. The next one is maintaining relevance. So what this means is staying up to date, keeping your skills and knowledge fresh in the industry, making sure that you're, on top of the latest thing you need to be on top of, knowing where the opportunities are and keeping across it as part of how you work. The next one is around building relationships. So obviously relationships are hugely important for our careers, whether it be your relationships with your past colleagues that you want to keep up to date, whether it be you've got an eye on where you want to go and you start building those relationships now. There's opportunities to do this throughout your career on an ongoing basis, and I suggest that's a key part of it. If I swap down to the bottom left now, maximising results. So I guess that's what I was talking about initially. So how can you make sure that you're actually achieving results that are meaningful to the business and contributing to them on an ongoing basis and getting those under your belt as well? That's going to be a massive contributor to your next career move. The next one is around leveraging your resources. So that's your time and your team, making sure that you're working efficiently. I talk a bit about the 80-20 rule in that as well, Lynn. So, making sure you're focusing on what's actually delivering results for you and prioritising effectively. And then the last one is around elevating your reputation. So I'm a pretty big believer that marketers need to market themselves. So how are you spreading the word around what you're achieving, sharing some of your knowledge back to the community, and, amongst other marketers as well. So that's a very quick summary of this process, which I have written about and, I suppose live by. But I think all those elements are really important right now if you're looking to prepare for your next move that you can do now. You can do little things every day, but there's a lot there that are quite easy to do and that we all know how to do, but might not be kind of thinking of in this context.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I have actually started to read Louisa's book, and it's there's some great things in there. I've even been writing notes. It's been good. I would also say that if anyone on the call has questions for any of us, please just pop them into the chat window or the Q&A tool within Zoom. If you're not familiar with using Zoom, that chat and Q&A buttons are down the bottom, or they should be down the bottom of your Zoom window. We will take questions live in the session today. If you post a question, if you're watching via Facebook, you can also post a question in the comments, and Nia on our team is looking at that. We did have some other questions come in prior to the call. One is a question that I think we have had pretty much every week since we started this, and it's how can I cut through with my marketing right now? And that question has come through in a few different forms. It started out with everybody seems to be jumping on the bandwagon of upping their digital marketing right now. Should I be doing it? And if I am doing it, how on earth do I get seen over everyone else? What are your thoughts on that, ladies? Should people still be doing a heap of email marketing and, social media marketing, advertising, those sorts of things at the moment?
I'll give a few thoughts on this initially. Look, I think it's going to be very different for everyone depending on your audience, and it all comes back to what's the state of your customers. So kind of goes back to that point I made earlier. If you haven't been speaking to them and if you don't know exactly where they're at in all of this, then this is, most number one thing to do, most important. So I think, if your customers are still going about their world and still existing and buying products and doing things, then yes, your marketing needs to continue. I don't think it's going to be in exactly the same way, though, because we need to acknowledge what's happened and what's changed and acknowledge what we're doing differently as well as businesses. Perhaps trying to offer some certainty in our reliability and what we've got on offer as well, I think is important. So that would be the first thing. I think if your customers are not going about their day-to-day in some kind of normal way, then maybe it's not the time to be spending money chasing them. So I think it really comes back to that as the first and foremost thing to figure out.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I noticed that quite a few of our participants are in the B2B services industries, in insurance and legal. And one of the things that I've found to be quite a practical way of really engaging with and having those discussions with our clients is getting the team, the leadership team and the directors and associates, the ones that are client-facing, in the medical situation, those that are on the service provider who got people in the chair, having the conversations with the clients to really get an understanding about what are the things that are going on for them, what are their pain points, what are the problems that are going on, having that sort of bedside chat type thing, what's keeping you awake at night. For my lawyers, I've got lawyers across all different sectors, I've worked for a lot of different law firms, and getting them to pick up the phone and talk to their referrers. Most lawyers get their work from referrers, unless they're in a family lawyer or more of a retail legal environment. And getting on the phone and saying, hey, we're actually able to help you through this off the clock. We're doing a bit of that. We've been setting up Q&A legal webinars so that, our clients and our referrers can jump on and ask questions. And this is a big change for lawyers because they are not lovers of this kind of technology. And so they have to be brave and give it a go. And again, when I'm going back to the video piece, is actually having more content that's information-based, useful content that's going to be quick for people to absorb so that they can then utilise that in their worlds. So in the legal world, your accountants, your financial advisors are getting bombarded. They're our front line of the business health world. They're our frontline workers. They're getting, massive numbers of inquiries around what can I access? Can I get JobKeeper? Can I get this? Can I get that? How do I do my leases? How all these heaps and heaps of questions. So any of their service providers that are helping them to survive and be nimble and not be dragged into a whole lot of work that they can't get paid for is going to help their referrers and their clients to survive. So it's this understanding the chain of business connections. So, when you're analysing who are my customers, also analysing your suppliers, your referrers as your customer base. What are their needs as well? How are we all going to work in that ecosystem that we have to survive and deliver? So as marketers, actually going and facilitating a leadership team meeting and actually sharing, okay, here's a framework, getting everyone on board, getting them all involved in a quick action plan, who's going to do what by when, who's going to talk to who, all that sort of stuff that comes down to very pragmatic we're going to do it. And then let's all meet next week, bring it back. What have we learnt? So, and what's our digital team learning from the data online as well, so that we've got all this beautiful, rich, qualitative and quantitative material that we can work with. It's really, this is a dream for us as marketers, because we're really needed. And people are going to listen to us, and you've got to step up and be brave and take them and say, go to the CEO, go to the managing partner, go to the owner, business owners, go to your clients and say, I'm prepared to come in and facilitate a meeting, an action planning meeting. Let me facilitate it. We'll do it on Zoom with the whiteboard. There's some great whiteboard tools on Zoom, or however way you want to do it, if they're still operating in an environment where, if you just want to use, I've got a whiteboard, like a butcher's paper thing. Sometimes they just want to see it like that and brainstorm. We're doing it over virtual meetings. And I tell you what, it just helps them all bring together, because they're looking for us to be able to do these types of strategic facilitations. And more brains working together collaboratively are going to come up with something far more powerful than you are going to do by getting on and talking, even within your own industry. And not only that, you're going to achieve a level of respect in your organisation. I tell you what, there's your career project, your career plan. Even if you decide after all this you want to step up to another bigger role, you're going to have a fan club within this organisation that are going to be the first ones to say, you know what, go for it. We will be your referees. You've saved our butts, and help us recruit someone that can replace you. And I've done that for a few organisations pre-COVID, and this is the opportunity for you guys in your careers to go. Now, if you're out of work and you're going for a job, dream. Who's the best brand that you think's got the biggest chance of survival, that you can bring something to the table? Do a bit of a map around what you would do if you were in that job, and send that through to the person that's feeling the greatest pain in that organisation. I've had some very, very clever young marketers who've lost their jobs and got in contact with me with a little broad brush plan about something they could bring in to Businesswomen Australia. It's an experimental brand. So I'm going, wow, I don't know if I can pay you, but what about we profit share on that? Let's have a crack at it. Let's keep you working. So, think outside the box. There's loads of organisations out there and associations and not-for-profits that might be able to do with something that you could bring to the table, so that you're still working and then you've got a great reference. So be practical, be creative, be brave, be busy. Keep working.
I love that enthusiasm, Lynn. You've always got such good enthusiasm. It's infectious. Louisa, we've had a couple of questions come in from the attendees here. One directed at you. It says here, you're a key influencer in the digital and interactive marketing space. Are there any key trends that you've been watching that you think are going to change and either take a back seat, change, or propel forward? So I guess what she's saying here is, have you seen anything that's changed that you think might stick post this?
Yes. And then there's a subsequent question as well, which I'll touch on if you like, as I give you some answers there. Look, I think definitely there's some things that have changed, and it's changed not only how marketers are marketing, but what consumers expect as well. So I think that's important to note. So I'll run through a couple of ones that come to mind, whether I'd call them trends or just things that I'm seeing in the industry. So for example, obviously content is a big one at the moment. So there's obviously a lot more video content going around, and also the quality of video content. Look at the quality of what we're watching now. Interestingly enough, I was watching old school TV last night, and I saw a lot of TV ads with Zoom kind of pictures on them, just to highlight that they're actually current and relevant to the time. So I think people's acceptance of video quality, they're not going to be expecting the highest quality. They'll be willing to do something a little bit more rough and accept that quite willingly now. I think there's some opportunities around content at this stage. So I know that a lot of people are doubling down on content and SEO and making time for that now. If you're not perhaps if you haven't got some of those other digital hustles on that we talked about earlier, looking at your content and trying to leverage this time to create content perhaps in advance, make sure your SEO is up and firing and doing what it should be. This is the kind of stuff you can do in this time. I think obviously e-commerce this has pushed a lot of other businesses into e-commerce or looking at other solutions in this space that they might not have already had in place. And I think that will kind of stay there and they'll be enabled in this new way moving forward. There was a mention, and I thought about this as well. Sonia asked about Facebook and ad costs. And I've also heard and seen that ad costs are down a little bit at the moment from what they were previously on Facebook. I have heard of success with people still selling with these reduced ad costs, and, you know, the ones that are getting marketing ads up there where it's relevant. I think it's a great opportunity to get that cut through at a lower price than what you were paying before. So as long as your customers are on Facebook, as long as they're buying products like yours, then yes, I would completely be leveraging this and trying it out. The only way to know is to really try it and see. And I think the other thing is I've heard a bit around podcasts as well at the moment. Podcast listening numbers are apparently down a little bit, but it is a great time if it's been something that you've been meaning to do to get your podcast up and sorted, because you might have perhaps a little bit more time in this space to look at this content and to make a dent in getting it up. And I think once the commuting begins a little bit more, that the listening time will go back or be increased from what it was previously. So I think there's a couple of opportunities there. I know, Amy, you had a different question around email, so I'll save my comments on that one for a moment.
Well, I was actually just going to put that question to you. It's a good time to ask it. It's something that we had been asked last week and from a few different clients as well, and that is around email marketing open rates. So the question specifically was, are email marketing open rates up or down at the moment? And I would extend to that question and say, I think people are wondering, should they be doing more or less or the same amount of email marketing at the moment?
I'll give you my opinion on that, Lynn, and then I'll hand over to you. Look, I think email has and still is one of the most valuable assets that a business can have and a marketer can use. So I'm always going to be a big fan of email from that context. I had a quick look specifically at some of our rates in the last few months, and numbers are definitely down in terms of opens. I would envisage that, for example, we have a B2B audience. Things are happening. People are perhaps not working as much as they were. They might have been stood down. They might have had role changes. There are things like that are going to impact. I would say our open rates are maybe 10 to 20% down at the moment, across the board as a generalization. Look, I haven't kind of put them in a spreadsheet and plugged them out, but after having a bit of a look, that's what we're seeing at the moment. So having said that, that doesn't mean don't email. That means that, maybe some emails aren't being monitored to the same extent they were before, but I still think they're always going to be a good channel to use. Just make sure you've got something valuable to say that's valuable to your customers, not just to you.
Did you have anything to add to that?
I'll add to that. What's been interesting from a Business Women's Association compared to my clients is the number of unsubscribes, which I get excited about because I want my numbers to be true to, if people aren't really engaged and not really that interested, please opt out. Because then we know that our true numbers are really interested in what we're about. So what we found when the first sort of lockdowns was our e-news had one of our biggest opt-outs, and then our next one that we've sent out had our greatest increase in openings. So I thought that was a really exciting metric after the disappointment of Bridget, who runs our e-news, was like, oh, God, look at all these opt-outs. And I'm going, no, this is good. This is like people are cleaning up what's in their inbox. They've got time to work out what do I really want to be doing. And when we had a look and analysed it, had been a lot of men who had been subscribing over the years to our e-news, probably for some sort of interest in selling to women, but realising that they got no chance. So that's great. They can do that in other ways. But anyway, what I did want to add is the importance of what I've found, particularly with my, in terms of solo accounts, what we've found is our Google ads are going crazy. I don't know what people are doing. Maybe they're at home. There's a lot of sole traders out there that are trying to get their books up so that they can justify job keepers or whatever, but we're getting incredible spikes in search on Saturday night. Very interesting. So again, depends on your product. So we've actually increased our spend on Google ads and really using a lot of those and actually looking at little snippets of videos on things that are going to pop up on, platforms that people that are sole traders are interested in. So really getting into that the whole sort of consumer psychological demographic. What are they doing? What are sole traders doing? Where are they hanging out? What are they watching? What are they listening to? What are the podcasts that they're going on? How can we actually be having our solo accounts app popping up on that? So again, it's horses for courses, whatever industry you're in. Certainly in my medical practices, because it's all been only emergency dental, for example, we've cut right back on our e-marketing, right back on everything, and just pushed a lot of our broad banners, changed all our banners to "We are open for emergency dental." So using banners so that when people just go and sit on when you're out and you think, oh, I need to go to the dentist, are they open? And you're on Facebook and you go straight away, you can see from our cover banner, we're only open for emergency. So really, how do you make it quick and easy for your customer base to know where you're at, what they can do with you and what's going to be of value? Where are they searching, and how can those prospective clients and customers find you? And get them into the sales process so that it's easy to then engage with them and solve their problem.
Excellent. Just in the few minutes we've got left, we have had another question come in, and it's to all of us, from Noelle. A few weeks ago, the message to many marketers was very much, don't do the hard sell right now. People are stressed and anxious and preoccupied, and they don't need your sales spam. Do you think that advice has changed, and is that really only for Australian audiences because of our low level of COVID cases?
Yeah, interesting question. I might not delve into the sales spam bit of it too much, but I think maybe, it's all about relevance, isn't it, at the end of the day? I think definitely in Australia, look, the vibe that I'm seeing is that, everyone wants to kind of get back to work. And I guess our fear around COVID seems to be quite low due to our cases. So, yeah, look, I think in countries where there's more fear around the health side of things, then that's going to be a completely different audience reaction than where you don't have the fear. So I think that's probably the first thing to be looking at from that perspective. I think, though, that if businesses are out there and doing stuff and your target audience is doing stuff, then yes, they can be sold to, obviously in, the right way. So I wouldn't be holding back necessarily if your target audience is doing stuff. I think, the people that I've heard who've been a bit doubtful about, how a launch is going to go or how something's going to work, they've actually hit their targets and sold out or done similar things. So just keeps going back to that target audience for me.
Yeah, it just keeps coming back to being appropriate for what it is that you're either selling or marketing or what your clients need, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We've only got a few minutes left. Can I maybe ask each of you to give me your either top two leaving thoughts or just maybe about a minute each on something that you'd like to leave the audience with?
I'll finish off. Just take charge of your own life, take charge of where you sit within an organisation and the value that you bring, and be bold. In terms of, there's always a percentage in the market at any time that hates anything to do with marketing. If it's comms, advertising, communication, they're not in your target market. They're just critical people. They're a bit like trolls. When you really have got a buyer that's looking for something and they're searching and they find it easily and they jump in and are so pleased that their problem is solved and they're willing to pay for that, I mean, just keep focused on that. Don't let the detractors and the negative things in our industry stop you from knowing and doing what you need to do. So be bold, be brave, and have fun. God, it's a fun environment for marketers. We've got to be the voices that aren't the doom and gloom day. There's plenty of those around, and that's not what our profession in our industry is paid to be. We're paid to be positive. We're paid to see opportunities. We're paid to be creative. This is what we are. And if that's not what you are, then now's the time to go and do some studying and, become an accountant.
It's going to be fun too, Lynn.
You see all my clients, I love them to death, but they need me just like I need them to do my accounting. They raise all the risks and I love it. Bring them on, but we bring a different piece to the puzzle.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Louisa, what would you like to leave us with?
That's a hard act to follow, actually. Look, I think right now, a lot of people are feeling a lot of different things and it's really hard to generalize. But I think even if you're feeling a bit paralyzed about where to go or you're a bit stressed about what's happening, it's a really good time to reprioritize. So just stop, take some time, look at what you want to achieve in the next 3 months and refocus from there. That would be my advice right now, because I think no matter what, we're all doing something a little bit differently to how we were before. And if you haven't kind of already got it really clear on where you're going and what the next steps are, then that's kind of something you've got to do straight away. And talk to your customers, call your customers. Make sure you know exactly where they're at, because that will really define your next moves.
Yeah, such good advice. And so many of the things that the two of you have said in today's conversation, really they're things we should, as marketers and businesses, be doing all the time. We should always be talking to our customers. We should always be giving out appropriate content and marketing. But sometimes we get lazy or we get busy, or businesses think they know everything about their market, and you get a bit complacent. So it's a really timely reminder of, get back to that, get back to your 20%, get back to the things that really matter. Massive thank you to both of you for being so generous with your time today. And thank you to everybody who has joined us online. We couldn't do it without you. We couldn't do it without our panelists. We really appreciate the insights from all of our community. Thank you again, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. My recommended action item from today's show is to look at how you're performing in your role right now and make sure you're demonstrating your value. Come and join me in the Interactive Minds Facebook group, where hundreds of marketers have discussions, answer questions, and I share the latest news I'm seeing in the industry. You can access today's show notes at interactiveminds.com/podcast. See you next week.